Hi, Bother Brigade. Here's what's bothering me today. This is an authentic Ushanka actually made in Kiev, and I got it at a Ukrainian festival. Now, the reason why this is important is the fact that it really isn't, and this also goes for a lot of the coverage of what's happening in the Ukraine and also arguably in Kazakhstan, because what's going on there is part of a much bigger geopolitical story that never really gets talked about openly, even though to anyone who knows anything about this, it should be plain to see. So today, we are going to try and very much oversimplify what's going on in the Ukraine and also in Kazakhstan. I've seen way too much stuff going back and forth on my timeline about people like defending Russian aggression or, supporting Ukraine. Here's the thing, right? Neither side is really good in this fight. Russia's land grab of Crimea, very much condemnable, even if it is majority full of Russians. But again, the reason why Russia grabbed it is because Russia always wants to do the following. It wants to secure its position geostrategically, which means, unfortunately, in terms of the geography around them, that is way too much open space for enemy troops to just kind of invade, which is why historically Russian borders have always sought to focus forces at crucial access points. This is why a lot of Russian history is tied to the Caucasus and the Black Sea to provide access to, well, the rest of the world in warm water ports. This is why, again, Crimea was so important to them. Elsewhere, you also have their complete dominion over Central Asia, so that they only really had to anchor in key areas around the mountains, as opposed to over the vast plains and desert that occupy much of Central Asia. The reason why this is important is that it also explains Russia's current actions in the geopolitical sphere, because Russia, even though it's much smaller, wants to have the same level of security, which is why the CISTO exists. The CISTO is the thing that people are all in a tizzy about right now, because the CISTO has been invited by the president of Kazakhstan to send, as people love to put quotations around it, peacekeepers in to quell the violence, which we are going to get to in a little bit. The CISTO is basically Russia's version of NATO, but it pretty much only applies to like Russia, Belarus, some Central Asian states, and that's pretty much it. That is, again, Russia trying to keep its foot in the door in its former Soviet republics, former Tsar territories of the old Russian Empire. It's basically them still trying to manage what they can in a geopolitical sense. So why are we talking about this before fully talking about Ukraine and Kazakhstan? Because it's crucial that people understand that Russia's main goal is to ensure that it has influence over Central Asia and is able to influence the rest of continental Europe, either, economically or politically in some fashion. Right now, they seem to be doing well on the economic front in terms of them being the main supplier of a lot of gas for Europe. But with Europe trying to develop and push into renewables, Russia is also recognizing the writing on the wall that, that means we should probably secure the things that are very crucial to us, such as Sevastopol base, which was in Crimea. Oh, that's why they took Crimea, right? Okay, right. This starts to make sense now. Ukraine, again, we're oversimplifying way too much stuff here, but generally speaking, Ukraine has always been seen by Russia, rightly or wrongly, as its own backyard and personal plaything. And a lot of the current problems right now do stem from basically how, in the collapse of the Soviet Union, Ukraine had a ton of military hardware, including some nukes, by the way, and they decided, you know what? Okay, we'll sell a bunch of the stuff because there's no way we can manage it all. And, if people promise that we won't be attacked by Russia, then we will give up our nuclear arsenal. Because this was, again, post-Cold War. Come on, de-escalation. We got to get rid of the nukes, not build up more of an arsenal. And so Ukraine complied. This, of course, came back to bite them in the ass, as we've seen recently. So why does a nation like Canada seem to care so much about Ukraine? Well, that's because, again, thanks to this, and that's part of why this is actually telling a bit of a story, Canada is home to the second largest number of people of Ukrainian descent outside of Ukraine. The first is Russia, and then number 2 is Canada. This has to do with an immigration policy in Canada way back in the day, where we basically took a bunch of like Ukrainians, but I think there were also a bunch of Ruthenians as well, that the Russian Empire and also I think like part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire didn't really want, and Canada still wanted them good old white folk to settle the prairies. And so, hey, look, that worked out for everybody. And so this resulted in, of course, the massing of a significant Ukrainian diaspora in Canada. And of course, in the collapse of the Soviet Union, plenty of Ukrainians, Russians, etc. also came here. So this is why, unfortunately, there's a large geopolitical interest for Canada to oppose Russia in order to play well with a political, demographic, and voting base here in this country. That explains why most of the media you're seeing is all, Russia's amassing troops on the border and like all this stuff, right? And it's why they're nervous about Kazakhstan. So we got to talk again about Kazakhstan. Sorry this is all over the place, but I'm just trying to oversimplify like 60 years of goddamn history here. The reason why Kazakhstan is also important to Russia is that it was formerly the home of its main space launching base, which was Baikonur Cosmodrome. The Russians, again, recognizing that, you know what, we may not always have access to this, so we should have a second one just in case, have been building at least one, if not two others, somewhere else in the Russian Far East, aka Siberia. Now, again, with Russia and Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan is also a major oil and gas producing state. It's also Russia's backyard. And through Kazakhstan, on their southeast border, are the Altai Mountains, traditionally an anchor point for Russian and Soviet power. So Kazakhstan, in terms of the connection with the Baikonur Cosmodrome, similar kind of economic interests, if you will, and shared history, be it imperial or otherwise, has always meant that Kazakhstan is very much affiliated with Russia in a great many ways. And with the recent stepping back of the former president, who has been president since, until recently, he was president until the very end of the Soviet Union, was Nursultan Nazarbayev, basically the one-man dictator of Kazakhstan for that time. And so Russia doesn't want to see a political vacuum emerge right in their backyard, which can be exploited by the West or anyone else for that matter, which is why we're seeing so much focus on Kazakhstan in terms of, oh, Russian aggression right next door, when again the situation is a little more complicated than that, and also what is termed as Russian aggression, be it for Ukraine or Kazakhstan, makes sense in terms of Russia's geopolitical goals, which means we also need to talk about the West's geopolitical goals. The West is always about containment. This was the policy with China: make friends with people around China, contain China. Oh, we got to contain the Soviet Union, so NATO this way, if you attack anyone in Western Europe, that's an attack on all of us. And oh, look at that, even though Turkey is not in Western Europe, it's part of NATO. Same with Greece. It's almost like those two nations control strategic Russian access to the Mediterranean and then the rest of the world. Oh, right, that's why they're part of NATO. But that's not seen as American imperialism. The point of this is that this is all bullshit, right? From both sides of the conflict, in terms of the war hawkishness from the West and Russian entitlement to its next door neighbors. Neither side in this conflict is the good guy, which makes all of it so absurd. It's nearly as absurd as me wearing this hat for the entirety of this episode. But unfortunately, that's the actual situation on the ground. Broad strokes, right? I'm oversimplifying and skipping over a shit ton of stuff. But I'm just really tired of seeing like a two sides only kind of thing of Russia's not the victim here and West is actually doing good work, or, you know, oh, Russia's so good, West's super bad. It's like, please wake up and see the bigger picture. This isn't just about Russian imperialism and crony capitalism. It isn't just about Western imperialism. This is about geostrategic interests, but unfortunately the media, which is owned and paid for by the capitalist class, aren't going to actually talk about that because, you know, kind of boring, right? And that's the sad truth of the matter, that accurately trying to talk about the very complex situation and the tournament of shadows that is going on between Russia and the West, and that has been going on for well over a century at this point, That's not really of a lot of interest for people. People just want quick and easy explanations, clear and defined good and bad sides, when really the world is not like that. Geopolitics and talking about these things on the internet are not a zero-sum game, and yet people seem to think that they are, and that's what's bothering me today.